Youngstown News Talk 96.5 and 1260. The pledge these days, businesses are always trying to stay ahead of the competition while constantly managing rapid change and driving innovation. Just kind of curious what you have to do to be a business and what you have to do to succeed.
Tim Wasserman, who is a business executive himself, is joining the conversation this morning. Tim, welcome to the program.
Good morning to both of you. Pleasure to be here.
Hi, good to have you. So, Tim, organizations have to be a little bit more collaborative and inspirational versus rigid and old school, as we're finding. So what are some things that business owners need to think about as they're hiring young millennials and looking at the new year, what they should be doing?
Well, yes, it's really, we're, my firm, 2080 Strategy Execution, we really focus on helping individuals and organizations, both global organizations down to local organizations, for-profit, nonprofits, looking at this whole area of workplace performance. And a lot of what we've found to be true is that most work that gets done in organizations today is project-based work. So as we look to both bring new individuals on board in our organizations and also balance this increasingly varied workforce that we have, it's really critical that organizations look both at their culture and their structure in terms of how the work both traditionally has gotten done, but their implications for changing that as we move forward, because there are expectations that millennials have that many other groups have in terms of ages, in terms of demographics, in terms of inclusion, in terms of wanting to have a better understanding of what they're doing and how it's really having an impact on a daily basis in the workplace.
Tim, I'd say that millennials bring something to the table, but and Gen Xers bring something to the table, but you have to find, as you suggest, that balance. How do you find that balance to make everybody in the room happy?
I think, it really is one of, as a leader, regardless of where you sit in that leadership pyramid, if you will, in an organization, it's about understanding what's important to the individual. One of the things that we talk about, if you will, is that we need to recognize that one fits one, whether that's recognition and rewards, whether that's in terms of people's view in terms of their balance and quality of life. And you can take that to almost anything that's required and expected of an individual. So what we find is it's critical that we look and we're acknowledging that there are differences. We're helping facilitate the conversations, the dialogue, the types of activities that allow the individuals on that team, within that group, within that department or organization, to understand and value the differences. And that really comes from the leaders in terms of creating the kinds of activities, whether it's the way that work gets structured, it's building in time to team interactions, team meetings, whereby people get a chance to understand what's important and valuable to each of the individuals. It's reinforcing aspects in terms of working style. How do people like to work? How do they like to receive information? And recognize there are differences. So there can be a tendency that we like to hire people in the mirror image of ourselves, but much research suggests that a more diverse workforce, and by diverse I mean just diverse of working styles and ways of learning and ways of processing information, actually is beneficial, although it does put some a challenge for leaders to have to be more versatile, if you will.
Baby boomers are almost 70. They'll be 70 next year, and they're kind of aging out of several businesses, and millennials are starting to exert themselves. How are millennials changing the way that business is managed and led?
Millennials have some expectations that we're finding actually are expectations that are being more widely held, but, it is quite true that if we think about millennials, they've been raised, certainly what's most talked about is with technology is the only way they think. Social media, the way that they consume information, really out of touch and wanting to have access to it. We look at, I have a 20-something son, and, he literally doesn't know any other way to gain information except to get on media, to get on the Internet, and that's the way he consumes information personally as well as professionally. So certainly technology and looking to we're a learning organization. We enable companies and individuals, to improve performance. And so we're looking at how we share information, how information gets imparted. It's available just in time. But the other thing that's really critical for millennials is they really feel that they want to have meaning in their work. They want to understand the big picture and have a sense that what they're doing is making a difference, and that can be from a social perspective or from a professional perspective. But certainly they accept, as many of us do, that not everything that we do, it has to be meaningful. But overall, I have to have a sense that what I'm doing is contributing. And the more that we can help make that connection, the more millennials tend to be engaged and are more likely to stay with organizations, because they have no hesitancy to leave an organization, as I think many of us are aware, and that is a pretty significant change in mindset over some of us, who maybe are baby boomers or Gen X.
96.5 FM and 1260 AM, The Pledge, Parker and Davis this morning, talking with Tim Wasserman from 28 Strategies. Tim, as you're looking at the millennials and as they age, what do you think will be the big aha for them as they get a little bit older, just as we have in the baby boomer generation, that they're going to find will be the trend that comes up to meet them?
Well, I think actually, millennials are starting to move into leadership positions, and they will be the majority of the workforce within the next 5 to 7 years, arguably. I think what they're finding is the need to be more versatile in their leadership. So how do I lead a more diverse workforce? How do I lead baby boomers and Gen X? I know we spend a lot of time in our business. We focus on both the technical aspects of leading teams and project work, but also really the leadership components, and much of the work we do has to do with areas like managing without authority, because more and more organizations are being structured where teams get pulled together for projects and then they get disbanded and move on, and people may be co-located or they may be distributed over time and distance. So it really, for millennials, this notion that the leadership of a diverse population, but also I think that there are people who don't necessarily engage with technology as they do. So just as you might argue, some of us who are older and are looking to learn how to bring technology more into our everyday workforce, they also need to recognize the importance and the value of face-to-face communication and how do you connect with people on a personal level. And technology may enable that, but it may also have implications, as I mentioned, for more of that face-to-face interaction that they may or may not feel as comfortable with.
So often with the social media or with the technology of not having a face to interact with, we make assumptions based on the voice we hear. How do you coach or how do you encourage organizations to get beyond the supposition or the concept that they're not hearing necessarily what they think they're hearing, and then discerning what is actually being communicated? Because this is a problem I find in emails. People tend to hear the voice in their head, and they assume a certain piece of information is being communicated when the sender has a completely different idea.
Well, I think, unfortunately, we've all received emails in all caps, and sometimes someone left the cap letter on by mistake.
Yeah.
They didn't actually mean to, and other times they've done that intentionally. Again, I think it comes down to taking the time to understand who the person is on the other side that you're interacting with. And so even if that's virtual, we've seen, even if you think about teams that are at a distance, they're setting up and they're using technology to set up pages, if you will, for the team that includes pictures of individuals, that includes information about them. They if they've got a diverse workforce and often spread out say you've got a team that's in India and you've got a team in the U.S. and you've got a team in Ireland, and they post holidays and they post information so that you really get to know the people as people, and that breaks down these barriers that are created by technology where you really don't know the person because they're not sitting next to you, because you're not getting that cup of coffee or having lunch with them, those social interactions that really enable us to understand the way people think and the way they communicate. So, the ability to facilitate actually activities that allow you to understand and learn more about the other person ultimately does translate. And then the other piece is that we do work with organizations to help raise the awareness that how you communicate is interpreted differently by different people based on their working styles. And so you need to be attuned to, the all caps. You need to be attuned to the language you use. You need to, certain people will send a one-sentence email and certain people will send a 3-page email, and it's the exact same information. But part of that is driven by the style and their need of how they process information.
Tim, you raise a really interesting point when it comes to the culture. If we have a much more diverse working force where we're all in different areas. When a new executive or a new leader or a new project manager comes into an organization, how does onboarding look within the culture to help people understand? Is it going to be completely virtual, or do you encourage organizations, does 28 Strategies encourage organizations to do a little bit more connected face time so that you understand the culture you're entering?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's a challenge. Certainly I think you wouldn't find a lot of argument to say that the ability to get people together face-to-face, particularly in project-type work, at least initially, whether it's a new individual or leader joining that group, or whether it's the kickoff of a project or a team in an effort, even that's something that goes on over time, the ability to get people together to establish some ground rules, to establish some governance, to establish communication patterns, to establish, how are we going to handle conflict if that comes up. That's most effective when you can get people face-to-face. So that would certainly be preferred. In absence of that, particularly if it's a leader, enabling that leader to go spend time with people who are remote, while, again, there's a cost and a time investment, that foundation we find really does make a significant difference over time.
Tim Wasserman with 28 Strategy Execution. Where can people go to learn more about your organization and for their own business needs?
If people are interested in more information, they could go to www.strategyx, that's strategyx.com.